hear it. Yes, y'all. From the Dave Campbell's Texas football mothership here in beautiful Lewisville, Texas. It's Texas football today, an answer to the question, so they'll just give an internet show to anybody, huh? My name's Greg Tepper. I'm the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, a magazine, texasfootball.com. It's a corresponding website. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Whether you're watching us live on texasfootball.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all of the places you watch live things. Not television, though. Or listen to us on the podcast, which you can subscribe to on the podcast vendor of your choice. Either way, thank you for doing your part to support your local mediocre internet show. I'm sitting over there at the helm today, making us sound good. She's the Duchess of the Dork. She's Ashley Pickle. Hi, Ashley Pickle.
Howdy, friends.
You doing okay?
I am doing quite well. The par 3 contest is back on. There was a weather delay, so now we're doing real well. Real well. This is a golf podcast now.
Let's bring in our in-studio guest here on this big guest week. We're joined by the director of scouting for SMU, making a return trip to the podcast. Almost a year after your first trip. It's Alex Brown. What's up, dude?
Not much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming. Do you think there's too much golf?
No.
There's really never enough golf.
Oh!
Thank you! Boom!
Turn off the stream!
Let's go!
It's like baseball or golf. Like, if you're in a football office and you're constantly, like, watching hours and hours and hours of tape, and you walk into Coach Cooper's office and he's got, the par 3 contest on, like, that's good. Like, I can actually, like, take a little bit of a mind break. And
Look at that. Golf is good.
Well, now,
the official stance.
Now, here's the thing.
No, I'm terrible.
Yeah, because, you've got better things to do than play golf. But I am of the belief, one of my longstanding political principles is that there should be a live sporting event on at all times, 24/7.
Yeah, and here you are complaining about a live sporting event being
4 a.m.
on.
Christmas
Yeah,
Day.
that's a total contradiction.
Thank you. I'm glad someone gets it.
But
No.
it doesn't have to be golf.
Okay, beggars can't be
You're just
choosers,
ready
my
for
friend.
opening day.
I'm ready for opening day. I'm itching for opening day. Normally, the Masters comes on. This is the Masters, right?
Oh, my gosh, stop.
Normally, the Masters comes on, and we're already inundated with baseball, and so I can be like, all right, don't worry. I'm going to be worried about the Rangers left field situation instead of who's going to
because you're a
hit
sicko.
a 9-iron on the par 7 or whatever. But I digress. Now I just need baseball to start. Today's Wednesday, April 6th, 2022, 232 days till Thanksgiving. Happy birthday. Do you want to say it?
To our very own Ishmael Johnson. Happy birthday,
It's
Ish.
his birthday today. I told him that would be the last time we mention it.
No, it absolutely will not be.
Episode 1363. All right, we're continuing our guest extravaganza week by bringing in Alex Brown. Thanks for making some time. I know you're busy. These are different colors than the last time that I talked with you.
Yes.
The last time we had you on, we've never had SMU Director of Scouting, Alex Brown, on. We have had Rice, Director of Player Personnel?
Recruiting.
Director of Recruiting, Alex Brown, on. You've changed gigs, but now you're local, which means you can just come in the studio. Now you know where we are. Anytime you want to just crash, it's cool. We'll usually have golf on.
I was going to say.
So, I know you liked your gig at Rice. So what are you doing here?
So this was actually, SMU was the first school that I went to when I was in college my senior year. I had basically gotten every single no from all 32 NFL teams. They didn't want a guy who was going to a school that didn't have a football program and had zero work experience with the team.
Because you went to UTA.
Because I went to UTA. And UTA, I love the Mavs. Awesome.
Got to bring back that football program.
I know, we got to. Somebody, which camera am I on?
All
this one.
Anyway, just keep pointing on the camera.
So I go over there, and this was right when June Jones was let go, and they were in the interim phase. And I was like, hey, I want to work for free. I live right down the road. And to their credit, I mean, they're like, hey, we don't really want to bring you in when we are literally hiring a head coach right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be at University of Houston, where I got my first volunteer job for 6 months. And then Herman put me on, and we did some things over there. So it was always one that I was targeting, just as like, if they ever reached out, I would be extremely interested, because I grew up in Arlington. It's right down the road. I've spent the last 7.5 years in Houston, and like my nieces and nephews are growing up, and like my brother's family and my mom and dad. So it was something where not only was it a step up from a football program standpoint, the prestige standpoint, being from the area was huge to me because I have roots here. I know the area. I feel like as good as any area in the state of Texas. And when I met with Rhett Lashley, it was kind of like we both clicked. We had kind of similar thought processes on how we were going to approach the roster, approach recruiting Texas, approach just the whole SMU program. And it all felt right. And that just happens every now and then. And for me, it was one of those roles where now I'm really focused on the scouting world and the player personnel side. At Rice, I had an awesome opportunity with Coach Blumgren. He allowed me to run the show and hire my interns and hire my assistants, and that's like invaluable experience as far as being a manager and being in charge of a lot of different aspects. But here we have so many people hired on our staff that now you have specific lanes and you get to like really hone in on, for me, like my favorite part of the job is the evaluation side of it, the building of the team. So it just made so much sense across the board.
So, and because one thing we're going to do over the course of this conversation is probably compare SMU and Rice, right? Compare where you were to where you are now. And I guess we should start as a baseline. You didn't leave Rice because you didn't like Rice. There wasn't anything. This was just an opportunity that you couldn't pass up. Is that correct to say?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I still love Houston. Yeah. I know people up here like Dallas versus Houston. I like both now.
Yeah.
And it's weird to kind of feel like I'm from both cities at this point. But there was absolutely nothing wrong with that job. I loved it there.
So you mentioned clicking with Rhett Lashley. We had him in our offices a couple of weeks ago. 3 weeks ago he was in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, about him.
About them.
Mike Craven sat down with him. Seems like a cool guy. You mentioned that you guys clicked. I'm interested in what your first impressions of, because I don't know if you'd ever met Coach Lashley before, or that was your first meeting. I'm interested in what were your first impressions.
So my dad played baseball at Auburn. Auburn was my favorite school growing up when I was a kid. So I watched him when they won the national championship with Cam, kind of followed his career as more of a fan than anything. And the job, obviously, he reaches out. It's bang, bang, bang. Hey, got your name recommended. Can you come visit with me? And you go into these interviews and you're prepared with, booklet, presentation. This is how I would structure it. I don't even know what job I'm interviewing for. Like, I don't know if it's personnel, scouting, recruiting. So you kind of going in with an open mind. I got to feel this guy out, see what he's about. What is he interested in me for? And I come in the office and it's literally him and Casey Woods and Kyle Cooper, because they were still hiring the staff. They were still making decisions on strength coach, GAs, QC. So it was kind of an empty office. And you go in and I kind of have my book and, your bag, and you're ready to like, all right, so
first day of school.
When do I pull this out? And so we sit down and we start having a conversation. He's just asking me about, growing up, why is this job interesting to you? How do you see this program? Where do you think we can be? And it kind of went to a high level conversation within like 5-10 minutes. And in an hour and 15 minutes, I never got to the bag. Like I never got to anything.
Oh, wow.
And for me, I wasn't sold on like, hey, I'm for sure leaving. Like there's a good chance that I don't get this job and I'm still working at Rice and we're going to be in their conference. So I don't want to give them like the whole recipe. Right. So I didn't want to leave him with anything. And so I found out where they were staying. The coaches, like, what was their team hotel.
Wow.
Stayed there, go down to the restaurant downstairs, wait for them. Sure enough, some GAs, QC, some different people that were getting hired were there. So it was like I got to have basically 2 interactions with a staff, and it just felt right. Like we all meshed. And in terms of kind of like the vision for the program, it all lined up. And so as I'm leaving, he's like, so – I'll give you a call in a couple of days. Like, you got any questions? And I was like, well, like, what's the timeline on this? Like, when should I hear back? He's like, well, next time I call you, you won't come back for another interview. And I'm thinking, like, okay, this is either really good or really
yeah,
bad.
that can be
It's
two-sided.
like, will there be a phone call? Basically.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to one part of your story. You said you found out where the coaches were staying, and you went to that hotel.
Smart move.
Are you suggesting that you stalked your way into a job at SMU?
Oh, that is absolutely right.
Wow. I love the hustle.
Polite persistence.
Yeah, I love the hustle. Okay, so then I want to talk a little bit about the setup there at SMU, because it seems to me that it's a little bit different. You work with another guy named Brown,
Yes.
and Bobby Brown.
Not related.
Not related. You sure? I mean, we're all related in like the human
the
sense.
macro,
right?
You're really
But he's the director of recruiting ops. You are the director of scouting. Is there anyone else that I'm forgetting in this
Yes.
whole stew?
Yeah, so Shay Taylor's our on-campus director.
Okay.
So her and Bobby kind of work together in terms of like the logistics of junior days, official visits, unofficial visits. And in my role, like I'm a helper in those situations, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to be a big piece of it, but like they're organizing it, they're constructing it. So now I'm able to kind of like help in kind of a, hey, in the past we've done this, or I think we can do this. But at the end of the day, it's their call. So Shay's coming from Arizona State. Obviously, Bobby's from Air Force, but he's worked at UNC, Wake Forest, some high-level programs. Scott Natty is a huge piece of our recruiting process. And so his role is more so on the Dallas recruiting side. So we kind of call him our Dallas Dream Team. So it's Scott Natty, Jordan Blake, played at SMU, and Danny Wesley. So those three guys are so connected into every single person in the DFW area that they're kind of like, hey, we came across this name, or hey, this guy's coming in town. What is our approach going to be from either a recruitment standpoint or when they're actually on the visit? And then Megan Cornell is our director of external relations, and so she's kind of more involved with like the booster side of things, former players. So at the end of the day, if you look at our staffing, like you touch every single component of what is recruiting, because like recruiting is kind of this quasi. There's so many layers to it, whether it's the identifying players, the evaluating, getting them on campus and getting them to actually commit. There's steps to that and processes. So now you've got basically 3 different people who have been either director level or assistant director level people at different universities. And we kind of all get to share our, collective resources on like, hey, what's the best way to do this?
So it strikes me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I am a dummy.
Yes.
It seems like to me that they took what your job was at Rice and they kind of split it up into a few different places, because I remember in our first conversation you talking about, getting guys on campus and organizing those types of things, stuff like that. That's no longer in your purview, because the other thing I remember from our conversation was you talking about how the thing you're really passionate about is just geeking out over film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just evaluating and stuff like that. Is it fair to say that in this new job you are having more time for the evaluation side, and you are spending less time on the, let's call it, operations side of it? Is that a fair assessment of it?
Complete fair assessment.
Yes.
Good job.
In your face.
1 for 1.
Yeah,
You got
I did.
one.
Wait,
A blind
she probably would have guessed it too.
Yeah, a blind squirrel
But
finds a nut every now and
but
then,
she's
huh?
not speaking into this microphone.
That's true.
Okay, so then you get more into the evaluation. Is that you're still early days in your tenure here? Do you like your job?
I love my job.
Do you like your gig? This
Yeah.
this seems like they kind of separated out the parts of the job that were part of the job, and now you get to focus more on the thing that you're super passionate about, which is just watching Huddle all day.
Being a nerd.
I think I've kind of got you pegged here.
Yeah, you got me pegged pretty well. And then just in terms of making the numbers make sense, and making sure we're bringing the right people, and half of it's the film, but half of it's like doing the research and making the calls and getting to know the kid and talking to the kid and the coach, and it's both information gathering and like actual evaluating talent. So that's the thing that most people kind of forget or don't put as much attention to, but it's really a 50-50 deal as far as like your resource allocation.
Alex Brown from SMU joined us here on Texas Football Today. You can get involved in the conversation, hashtag TFT. Get questions in the comments if you ever want to ask a director of scouting all about his job. Okay, let's talk about like recruiting philosophies. SMU and Rice are different schools. They are in different parts of the state. SMU still got very high academic standards, but maybe not the rigorous academic standards that Rice has. how would you delineate between what is your recruiting philosophy now, maybe versus what you guys were doing at Rice? I'm not asking you to crap on it.
No. So like, it is completely different. So like when you're dealing with the academic kind of rigor of Rice, our main focus was, okay, every single, our phases, there are different levels of academic kids that come through from a profile standpoint. The upper echelon guys, we need to know about every single one of those guys in the state of Texas, specifically Houston, but the entire state of Texas. And we're going to take our shot at them. Whether they're a 3-star, 4-star, we don't really care, because in the same way that SMU, we're going to recruit every top-end player in the DFW, whether we sign them or not. We're going to have that relationship built up for whether it's the back end or the front end, okay? So that's the starting point, and then you work your way out. And with Rice, it's actually kind of like an awesome process, because you get to just, hey, I'm going to filter out all of the GPAs and all the test scores, and with COVID waivers now, not requiring tests, Rice pulled back on that too. So we were able to basically like, hey, I'm going to take every high academic kid from our really pipeline areas that we have the best relationships with, and that's going to comb my list. Whereas in SMU, it's like, I'm going to evaluate every Division I caliber football athlete in the DFW, and then I'm going to see what I'm missing in this class. And then I start to work my way out. And what naturally happens, because of whether it's Coach Thibodeau being from Houston or Coach Nivar being from Houston or recruiting Central Texas, we're going to gather a lot more names as we go through that kind of sorting process. But really, we're able to kind of like dig the roots a little bit deeper and work our way out from that standpoint.
SMU is also a program that much more, I would say, than Rice has leaned into the transfer portal. They've gone in there, and that's kind of changed the game a little bit. Let's first talk a little bit about how the transfer portal has changed things, because it seems to me, I'm working on a piece right now for the magazine about just the state of recruiting across the state of Texas. It seems like there is a noticeable bite that the existence of the transfer portal has simply taken out of the number of high school kids that people are taking. From your perspective, and you can just say everything, but how has the transfer portal changed your job? And are you responsible for, if a kid enters the portal from, Harvard, I'm picking a name at random, are you responsible for scouting them as well?
Yeah. So that's a huge chunk of what your day looks like. I mean, I've got an intern assistant that Brian Filker goes through 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then I have another guy that comes in, Trey Quinn, former SMU receiver. He's back to finish his degree, and he's interning with us.
He's really good.
He was really, really good.
Does he have any eligibility left?
No, he doesn't.
Have you checked? Because there was a bunch of COVID stuff.
No, so he was wondering. He was wondering because he graduated or didn't graduate, left for the NFL early. Might have 1 year left. Get on the golf team.
I love it.
No, so we're combing through the entries, right? So this is the waiver wire, and that's that component of it. But you also got to be ready for, in case a guy that isn't getting playing time at a higher level school that about, have a lot of intel on how they were in high school, or SMU is one of his top schools coming out. So it's a constant churn of both the guys entering and the guys that could be entering. So what it's done, I think, for the college side of it is now you're able to look at short-term needs, long-term needs, in a much more professional standpoint. And in my world, in terms of like the personnel directors across the country, you have to be on top of your own roster, because if you're not talking to someone else is, and you have to know where these guys stack up versus the players that enter in the portal, because grass isn't always green on the other side. You want to make sure that you're keeping those relationships within your building, because why would I bring in a player if that's going to lead to 3 others transferring out, right? So those are the things you got to weigh. And then on top of that, it's not just I'm going to go in the portal and I'm going to find the best 5 at X position. Because if the next 5 at that position are all seniors, I'm going to have to basically waste 5 more picks in next year's draft class, signing class. So it's a game of like, okay, where are we at developmentally at each of these positions, and how do we need to supplement? Do we need a older guy? Do we need a younger guy? And that kind of helps build your list.
It's funny you mentioned like the draft part of it. And I know you have some history with the NFL and things like that on that side, not only as an NFL liaison there for Rice, but also you worked for NFL Network at a time and stuff like that. It strikes me that the transfer portal, like high school recruiting is like the draft, and the transfer portal is like making trades or like signing free agents and things like that. And so it feels like it's given colleges a much more robust set of options to build their roster, similar to what you're seeing at the NFL level.
I completely agree. And that's where like the staffing has to change. And I think colleges are picking up on that. Whether it's, a scouting department and a recruiting department or a high school recruiting, college recruit, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, you need people that can comb through all these names because it's a lot.
Okay. Let's talk about the other thing that everybody's talking about in the recruiting world, which is NIL.
Yeah.
How much do you interface with that, and how have you seen from your perch, how have you seen that change the landscape of recruiting? Because I know it was about probably 10 months ago that everybody around here was freaking out because of Quinn Ewers reclassifying and things like that. I kind of told people, don't freak out. It's going to happen like twice a year, and, Texas high school will be fine. You don't have to worry about seeing your favorite team playing on Friday night. But how have you, from your perch, seen NIL affect the recruiting world?
It's, first off, from a rule standpoint, I'm not allowed to have any interface
with
it. So I don't. The biggest thing that you're seeing is the market hasn't settled itself out yet. Oh, here we go.
You be quiet. Oh, I know who that is, too.
This is a professional podcast, sir.
Thanks
I'm going to
for
need all phones silenced.
Go on.
The market hasn't settled itself out yet, right? So Quinn Ewers gets the $1 million deal, and then the unnamed player that we all know who his name is gets a $7 or $8 million deal. So what does that actually mean, right? Like, people are just seeing the big number and not realizing, hey, this is prorated. Hey, he's got to do X, Y, and Z. There's layers to it. So, like, at the end of the day, I think it's a positive move, but it's not ironed out. And that's where we're having, one kid that's at a certain talent level is making $8 million, and another kid who's just as good, maybe even isn't making anything, and he already transferred to the other school, and he's like, crap, like, did I waste my opportunity? So I think it'll take like a year and a half for that to actually like sort itself out, because, like, that's just how the market works. Like, it's going to take time for people to see, like, okay, you're willing to spend this and they're willing to spend that. And it's not even about buying players, because that's not how the system is built. It's built for, hey, this guy is a hot commodity at Champ Sporting Goods or Rally House or whatever it is. He should be able to like get a cut of that. He, is getting hit up for marketing deals or whatever, name, image, or likeness. So it's like, if I'm able to go to a bigger school and get a better situation, why wouldn't a kid be able to do the same thing if the market says that, right? From a capitalism standpoint, because that's the country we live in. Right.
So from your perspective, and I'm certainly not asking you to sign this with the pony and things like that and say this is the official stance of SMU, but you, Alex Brown, view NIL as net positive. Got to figure some things out to make things a little bit smoother, but overall a net positive for the sport and for players.
Net positive. The education piece is the most important thing. Of don't sign a $5 deal that the guy's going to have the rights to your tweets for the next until whenever. Like, you got to read like these contracts.
I'll buy your tweets for $5. I'll buy your tweets for $5.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me that idea.
You're
That's
welcome.
what we need to get into here, Dave Campbell. That's the next step.
That seems like journalistic ethics just fantastic.
We did
just
have
great.
So we did have an idea. I'll just give out the idea because we're probably not going to do it. We were going to, when NIL first started cooking, I was like, you know what? What if we went to all 12 FBS teams in Texas and we went to their deep snapper and we offered them like $100 each, and we said, we need you to just kind of tweet about Dave Campbell's to be like, the official publication of Texas long snappers, stuff like that. Feels like that's a real market that's been underutilized.
Yeah, because everyone's already targeted kickers. Punters are people too. Like,
Punters.
Pat McAfee's really got that kind of market cornered. Like, you go for long snappers.
I know the deep snappers. Deep snappers are, first of all, they have long careers in the NFL too. JP Ladisor's been a Dallas Cowboy for 100 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's like a long-term investment.
I was in high school when he was playing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. High ceiling, low floor.
Okay, so you're back in Dallas. You told me in confidence that I'll not bring to the air that you guys have figured out a place to live. How's the housing market going?
It's fine for me because I'm not buying.
Okay, got it. Okay. Are you? So then you mentioned off the top that you were pleased to be back in Dallas and things like that. Do you feel like you have, as a Dallas guy, do you feel like you've gotten back into the rhythm of the city, or has it changed a lot since you were a young whippersnapper?
It's nice to be able to go somewhere and not plug anything into Waze.
Well, except here.
Except here, yeah. Should have been a car lot. That was cool.
Our bad.
There's a little bit lack of humidity here too. Like that's got to be a change from Houston.
No, it really is. Now, the one thing that was awful, because I was training for the Houston half marathon, because I got into running when COVID hit. And Houston, like, there are no hills. It is below sea level.
Yeah.
The race might be one of the easier half marathons. And I'm like, okay, I'll ease into this. It's not going to be a big deal. And I get the call from getting the SMU job. First official visit's the weekend of the race. I'm like, golly, all that like training, I'm not going to get to run it. And my dad's like, well, the Cowtown's in a month. I'm like, okay, I've probably run like 4 times in the last 3 weeks because we've gone through 4 official visits and signing the class in less than a month. And I mean, the difference in the humidity is one thing, but the hills and like.
Well, you literally took a job
different.
at the hilltop. I mean,
literally,
it's a great point.
It was kind of written in the cards there.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, man, between the whole waking up at 4:30 thing and like I love running, like I'm glad we're friends, but like we're not the same.
The 4:30 thing, like once I got up here, it has fallen way off.
Okay, good.
No, because,
all right,
because,
welcome back.
Because now I have
one of us.
I have a commute now from Arlington because I'm staying with my folks now, just until I lock in that place. And I'm like, I'm getting every ounce of sleep right now.
Yeah, that's a smart move. Well, I'm just saying, it doesn't have to change.
Oh, it will change.
You can just keep
closer.
sleeping in.
It will.
Okay, you when I was texting with you earlier this week, you mentioned that you were on an official visit. What, I don't want you to give away all the secrets for an SMU, someone who's interested in SMU is going to do an official visit, but like, what's an official visit entail at SMU? What do you get whenever you show up on campus? And Rhett Lashley, I presume puts you on his shoulder and give you a little ride.
So what was really cool about the official visits in the springtime right now is we're kind of transfer world. Like these are older guys. They know what they want, right? So it's a lot more ball. It's based around, obviously, like we had a spring practice, a spring scrimmage. So we were able to kind of like funnel in both the ball side, but also getting around our players. The main thing that we always try to focus on is like, we're going to win people with the people in our building and like the relationship side. So like, I want to make sure that he's spending quality time with his position coach, with the head coach, with the coordinator, and most importantly with our players. You got to get a taste of Dallas. So like Terry Black's, Deep Ellums, can't beat that. Del Frisco's isn't bad in Uptown. There's just so many different places that you can go to based on what the kid likes. And that's like, from me to like other recruiting people, we always talk about like, you got to make it fit the player, right? Like you don't just do cookie cutter visits nowadays. Like it's just not how you do things. And with us being in Dallas, in 30-mile radius, you can literally touch anything in this city, which is pretty cool.
You guys have, I don't know. It's because one of the things that under the previous regime there at SMU was really important was like we're gonna draw a circle around DFW and that like we're gonna own that. My early thoughts on what we're seeing from Rhett Lashley and company is like, well, that ain't going to change. There are going to be some things that, are a little bit different, but like, is it still fair to say that you're not going to be doing a lot of flying? You're going to be doing a lot of driving.
A lot of driving.
Yeah, I figure that's the case.
Like, and that's the awesome part about this job versus any other job in the country is like, they did a really good job here. Like the last 2 head coaches that have been here did a great job of building this program up. And like we take a lot of pride in being Dallas's college football team. We're the only college football team in Dallas, Texas. So
that's exactly right. Do we have any questions from the people?
We sure do. We talked about him in This Week in Recruiting last week, 2 weeks ago. But people are wondering how you feel about Randy Reese, your recent signee from Oak Cliff.
Ooh, can you comment?
I cannot comment.
Okay, that's I didn't know.
A great question.
You got.
Well, we think he's pretty good.
I am
so
allowed
there's
to
that.
say, yes, we are recruiting him.
You
Okay.
are recruiting him.
That is
That
the
is-
extent of my.
I think
there's a checkbox.
Let me draw a hard line between that. We are presently not even sitting in the same room, so imagine that. I think he's pretty good. Don't
Yeah.
react. Don't react. Don't react. Don't react.
I'm watching the par 3 contest.
That's
Well,
great.
there we go.
I think he's pretty good.
Okay, I have another question. We always ask everybody about food, and we kind of got into that a little bit. But where around the SMU campus would you recommend people going? Have you had a chance
Yeah,
to do
so-
that?
If you're coming to one of our morning practices,
Mm-hmm.
Shugs has the best bagel sandwich ever.
Oh,
My
okay.
first day on the job, my intern Brad Jones, he's in law school. He's like, "Hey, you got to have a Shug."
Okay.
So it's really good.
Really
Okay.
good. And then, I mean, I guess you're from Arlington, so where's the go-to spot in
Oh, it's
Arlington?
El Gabacho.
Oh.
There's no
There-
even hesitation.
Oh, wow.
No hesitation. All right.
No.
Got it. That's very good. All right, you've now been in the college scouting game for 7 seasons. Is that fair?
This is going on 8.
This is going on 8.
Yeah.
So you've got a long enough resume here that I want to know if there's a kid that immediately springs to mind that you missed on. That there's a kid that you watched his film and you were like, I think I have an idea about what he is. But then, and it can even be a guy that you were like, we're going to take a flyer on him, and he ended up being unbelievable. But is there a guy that you watched his film and you were like, it's okay, you thought this, and then it turned out that he was
Yeah.
significantly better?
Yep. So Peyton Turner.
Okay, yeah.
And I actually really liked him, but I didn't like him. Like Roosevelt Majid at the time was our GA,
Mhm.
and we had lost a slew of commits because Tom Herman had just taken the Texas job,
Mhm.
and so we're kind of like keeping the walls in. Derek Parrish, who's doing an awesome job there, like he was kind of the ringleader of like, hey guys, don't leave, let's stick together. And Peyton was always on our radar. He tore his knee up his senior year, and he wasn't able to play half the season.
Mhm.
But he had a lot of basketball tape. He's this long, 6'6", 240. I don't remember how big he was in high school, but he was still like a developing body type. And the film, he's at Westside High School. He's not playing like high level 6A ball, and it was okay. It was solid. You could tell he was a hooper. But Roosevelt Majid was like, dude, like we're gonna have a hard time finding this type of skill set prototype. I love the kid's work ethic, and so we bring him on an official visit. And at the time, we were like, well, he'll grow into being an offensive tackle, like 'cause he's not super twitchy, like he's not this explosive, dynamic athlete. And his mom is like, she's awesome. She comes in, she's like, I want him to play defensive end. And she goes to the defensive coordinator, Mark D'Onofrio. It's me, AJ Blum. And we're sitting there in the hotel, and he's like, yeah, I think I kind of want him at the end. This is on the official visit. And once Peyton heard that we wanted him at defensive end, he was all in, signed the dotted line. He was actually deciding between basketball or football. And then you fast forward, he's recovering from that knee injury, shows up in fall camp, like 6 months, 7 months post-op. He's backpedaling and like almost running over the guy, in front of him in line. You're like, holy cow, like this guy's going to be able to play. And year one, he gets a pick like the first snap he takes. Just really had the work ethic, had the tools, and did way more than kind of I would have projected off the junior tape.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like that was a lesson where it's like, okay, if we're going to err on a projection, like we're going to go with like elite tools,
Right.
And the makeup. So
Okay. Something that drives me nuts, and this past weekend I listened back to our conversation, which is why I remember it so vividly. But something that always drives me nuts about recruiting, and I've talked to our recruiting guys about this. There are guys that I love that go out there and they play. They're unbelievable high school football players. They're putting up crazy numbers, and me, a recruiting dummy, I look at that and I'm thinking, like, the name of the game is being good at football. Like,
Well, the
Thank
fire
you.
alarms are going
all
off.
right, it's a fire take.
this is a fire take. Get ready.
It's hot takes only.
I'm asking, like, how much does that cross your mind? Like, whenever you look at the guys who are producing that at that kind of level, because I look at it and I'm like, this kid, like, yeah, maybe he's 2 inches too short or something like that, right? And I always say if he had 2 more inches, he'd be a 4 or 5 star kid. How much does that play into it? Is production in high school overrated?
It depends.
Okay, that's very good.
He threaded that needle.
Elijah
Well, it's
Chat-
going off in our office, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know.
So
the takes are too
Elijah
hot.
Chapman, number 40
Yeah.
for our defense. Like, if you just pull up the game film from last year,
Mm-hmm.
who jumps out on tape? It's him. Like, he is
Yeah.
unbelievably disruptive and explosive, and he's a problem to block.
Yes.
He's a problem to block at practice. Is he how you would draw up a nose tackle or a 3-tech? No, not at all. But that's where, from an explosiveness standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, play strength, like the aspects of the position, he is so good in all these other categories it compensates, right? So it's a sliding scale. And like the person that I would always point to is with the Raiders, Meek Robertson. He was a Louisiana kid, came down to us in La Tech. He wanted to stay home. He had a kid. But he was 5'8" and a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Fresh, he's 5'8" and a half, but he ran a 4.3 twice in camp and then locked down everybody that came in there. So I think it's case by case. It's hard to go with, to overlook the measurables on the front from
Mm-hmm.
a trench standpoint. In our level, like, you can win with smaller guys at the skill positions if you have elite speed. But that's where, like, you've got to have, what is your redeeming quality, and is the film really special?
Right. So it's got to be. It's got to be. If you don't have certain measurables, it can be overcome with another one, most notably speed. Right. Like,
Yes.
if you're fast, that's just something you can't teach, and whatever.
Yeah. And then length. So
yeah.
you can have a guy who's 6 feet tall, but he's got a 6'5" wingspan,
Yeah.
and that makes a difference as an offensive defensive lineman. Because
The other conversation that I end up having with guys, or like our recruiting guys, is we'll see a kid who just unbelievable is out there putting up big time numbers, and I'll go, why isn't this guy getting more looks? And it always, like, not always, but there's oftentimes another story of, like, there's a grades issue, or there's a character issue, or there's something along the lines. And so I imagine that is another reason why perhaps the game tape can be for people who just follow high school football like I do. The game tape can be deceiving in the sense that you got to know the whole story behind the kid, and not just, wow, he runs really fast and he catches really well.
correct.
Yeah.
And with the way the game has changed now, there's a transfer market and there's a high school market.
Mm-hmm.
As SMU, like, we better make sure we're giving out, like, real offers. Like, at Rice, you better give out real offers. Like, that kid's going to get into school. Or at SMU, we want him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where sometimes guys are getting slower to offer than others.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, somebody from out of state can come in and just chuck out 100 offers in the state of Texas. Well, they don't have to see, Rodney Webb
Mm-hmm.
at the Texas High School Coaches Clinic, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's my buddy, that's my friend. Like, I'm going to make sure that, I just threw out his name.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying?
Shout out Coach Webb. I actually owe him a phone call. Okay. So then, and you mentioned the relationship building and the things that you have to have not only within with high school football coaches, but within the personnel world in college. It strikes me that it is simultaneously an enormous world, and also, like, there's only 6 of you guys. Like, you guys are all, like, are you guys just on one big group chat? And does one of them have an Android?
Oh, that's the worst.
Dude, Matt Stepp.
Matt Stepp has an
Stepp's that
Android.
guy?
He has an Android.
Yes,
That's
he's the
right,
only
he is a
one.
green guy.
He's
the
a green guy.
Only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough scene. But
Brian Spillbeller with Track and Football has done a really good job of kind of creating a community for like all of us personnel guys. I wanted to be a part of that, and that's why I started the podcast. That's why I kind of branched out in that way, because, like, you go on, on my drive into work, I can pull up anything when it comes to college football, Texas football. I got it right here. Like, I can pull up anything with MLB or the draft. There's really, like, at the time, there wasn't much for truly personnel in college football. There's a lot of recruiting coverage, and guys at 24/7, Rivals, all these different companies do a great job of covering it, but they're talking the 5 stars, Alabama, Ohio State, the things that the common football fan wants to know about. But for me, like, as a younger director at the time, I was trying to get better at my craft, and so I'm like, all right, well, nobody's talking about it. I'll just call the people that I want to learn from and bring them on my show. So
really, the podcast arose from really selfish means.
for sure.
Yeah. Same thing with this. Like, this, that's all this is. Okay, let's see if we can get you in trouble. Your boss, Rhett Lashley, like I said, we had him in here, and seems like a great guy. Seems like a super cool guy. Do you have any dirt on Rhett Lashley?
I don't yet.
You don't. There's no like. There's nothing like he does. That's
I feel like you got to give him at least a
like
season.
quirky. Anything that you're like, huh? That's interesting. Any idiosyncrasies?
No, on a cool front,
Mm-hmm.
we actually start off every single staff meeting with a devotional. And
Okay.
So he makes
Oh,
every
nice.
single staff member that sits in those meetings give a devotional. I'm like 27 on the list, which is great. I got time.
Oh, really?
I can procrastinate.
Oh, so it's like everyone's on staff,
yeah.
and it's like, all right, like we're starting at 1, which is the offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
you know.
because we got a staff meeting at 1:30 today,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll go in and that's what'll be going down.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you know what you're going to say yet?
No.
Okay, fantastic.
So I knew what I was saying as the best man for my brother's wedding the afternoon before the wedding.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah, I was the officiant for my brother's wedding, and like night of.
Yeah.
I was just like, all right, we'll figure this thing out.
It's from the heart that way.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, Pickle. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
He has a 1:30. He has a 1:30 meeting.
Yeah, I was
so
fixing to say we got to get this
guy.
guy on the road.
He's Alex Brown. He is the director of scouting for SMU. First of all, congratulations on the gig. It's very exciting. And thanks for
Welcome
coming in. Welcome back.
Absolutely.
Now you know where we are. So
Yeah.
if you ever just want to drop by and hang, Pickle will be watching golf, and I will be ignoring it.
Yeah.
So it'll be great.
So please come by.
Now there's one last thing. This is Vince Young's 2001 Player of the Year trophy. We've ended 1,362 shows by asking him to come get it. So I'll do the outro, and then I'll ask you to ask Vince Young to get the Player of the Year trophy.
Okay.
Sound good? That's going to do it for us. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/Dave Campbell's. And, of course, see us at texasfootball.com. He's Alex Brown of SMU. Follow him on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
AlexM_Brown.
Oh, and listen to Up Close in Personnel, which is a frustratingly well-named podcast. Listen to that, too. For Ashley Pickle, I'm Greg Tepper.
I'm Alex Brown. And this, Vince Young, you are a childhood hero of pretty much everybody that I grew up with. So you need to come get this. So
Okay.
please and thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow with Gabe Brooks, 247 Sports here on Texas Football Today.